Well, I'm Joe Daniszewski. I'm president of the Democrats of Greater Tucson. Thank you so much for making it out tonight. We had a record crowd. This is our third debate of the season. We've invited President Biden to come back. We'd love to have him. If you didn't see how he presented the next day, by the way, in North Carolina, it's good for the soul to see that. So take a look. We have three candidates today, and they're all of Pima County Supervisor District 3, which I'm going to guess most of you live there. We also have some other candidates I'm going to recognize and encourage them to stay later on when we have some beverages for you so that you can mix and mingle. So we have Brian Johnson, who's running for treasurer in Pima County, and we have Mike Jetty, who's running for county attorney, and Sandy Rosenthal, who's running for sheriff. So again, hang around, mix and mingle, great opportunity for you. The Democrats of Greater Tucson, for nearly 40 years, we've kept our community informed about local candidates and policies through public forums. Visit our website, thedgt.org, for our event schedules and recordings. We host weekly events with local candidates to keep you informed. And Jennifer, you've been with us doing our video, our Zoom, and I believe Edgar and Miguel both are scheduled soon to do presentations. So looking forward to see you. The Tucson Agenda has been a gracious host with us. They're a daily newsletter on local government and politics run by Curt Prendergast, who is our moderator. Subscribe at tucsonagenda.substack.com. And a very special thanks to Mr. Curt Prendergast for making things go. With that said, let's give our moderator, Curt Prendergast, a warm welcome.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you to our candidates for participating. Really appreciate that. So I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to briefly outline the format and the rules of what we're going to do here today. So we expect this to last about an hour or so. I'm going to ask a series of questions to the candidates about issues that are important to Pima County governance. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer the question. If another candidate... Oh, I'm sorry. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer... I'm good there? Yeah? Each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer the question. And we'll do 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes. And then if anyone would like to respond to someone else's answer, they will have 2 minutes, followed by a 1-minute rebuttal. So in a moment, I'm going to give them a chance to do opening statements. At the end, they will also have closing statements where they will have 3 minutes each to do that. I will be keeping time here. And if I start saying time, if you all could applaud to make this move along, I'd appreciate that. Also, as we get near the end, I am going to get Raphael right here, who has note cards. He is going to pass those around. If anyone in the audience has a question, you can write it down, give it to Raphael, and I'll take it up here. And we did a coin toss to see who's going to go first. It's going to be Mr. Soto, Mr. Allen, and then Mr. Cuevas. The next question, we'll start with Ms. Allen, Cuevas, Soto, and so on. Opening statements, Mr. Soto, please, you have 3 minutes.
Well, I just want to thank you all for being here. I want to honor you for being here. And I just want to tell you a little bit of why I'm running, right? So a while back when Sharon Bronson resigned from her position, there was an opportunity to apply for the position. So I put my name in the hat. There was 8 of us there. But I think I disqualified myself when Rex Scott asked me, are you planning on running in November? And I said, no, I'm not planning on it, but if I do a good job, I would consider it. Well, they wanted somebody who wasn't going to be an incumbent. So I ended up kind of exploring if I should do this or not. I had people in the community saying, hey, you should really think about running. You'd be good at this. You're a native of Tucson. You have a lot of experiences. So I started to think about this, and I was getting to some anxiety and, well, should I not do this? And when I started to kind of think about it, I started to think about my dad, because my dad was a man of service. He wasn't formally educated, but he was a man of service. And I had a friend of mine that passed away, Rudy Gallego. He's a Vietnam veteran, Marine, lost his legs in Vietnam. Passed away, the family asked me to do the eulogy. So I do the eulogy. After I spoke, his son came up and said, you know, Edgar Soto's dad was the reason my dad, Rudy, got to coach Little League Baseball at Western Little League. Because back in 1978-79, the ADA law was not there. It wasn't signed into law till 1990. But they weren't going to allow Rudy to coach. But my dad advocated for him and another parent. Coached there for 30 years. His kids, his grandkids, and even his great-grandkids. And then I started to think about it, and I remember we had a neighbor who was deaf and wanted to play football. My dad advocated for him to play football. So my dad, you know, he had different jobs. He was a copper miner, he was a garbage man, and his favorite job of all was when he worked at El Rio Golf Course, because he got to play golf for free. And he loved playing golf, right? And so he was playing golf, having a good time. I think a new city manager came in and changed the policy, said that if you work there, you can't play golf for free, you have to pay full price. My dad was upset. He was like, well, you know, we take care of these greens, we pick up the trash even when we're not working, you know. And he said to me, and I remember this vividly, he said, you know, son, I understand policy. And I want you to know, when it comes to policy, do things right, but when it comes to people, do the right thing.
30 seconds.
And that resonated for me. And right then, I started, I'm gonna run, because anything of significance that's going to be done, it has to be done at that legislative or policy level. I could sit back and complain, or I could get a seat at the table, and that's what I'm hoping to do.
Great.
You know.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Allen, and I am also running for the Pima County Board of Supervisors for District 3. I wanted to just tell you a little bit about who I am. You know, I'm happy to have my family here with me. I am the daughter of Jack and Nancy Allen, who taught me the values, strong, clear, consistent values of hard work and also compassion. I'm the mother of Rafael, who is a TUSD student, attends public schools, so very important for us. He's also been raised bilingually, which is also very important for us. My husband, Steve, works for the city of Tucson, and also comes from a long background of working for labor unions, working for environmental issues, and comes from a family of folks who have worked in areas working for peace. I'm the sister of a union UPS truck driver, member of the Teamsters, and perhaps the nicest guy in the world. My family moved to Tucson about 30 plus years ago, but since then 4 generations of my family have called Tucson home. We are apparently a very perhaps sheep-like in our relationships to one another. My aunts, uncles, cousins, even my grandmother when she was alive have all called Tucson home. I also come from a family of union members. My grandfather was a member of the union. My father was a member of the union. My husband, my brother, uncles, my aunts. I come from a background of folks who know that when you stand together, you stand strong, and that there is power. There is power and strength in collective organizing. Organizing, in fact, has been the through line of my career. For the last 25 plus years, I have worked for social justice and environmental nonprofit organizations. Most recently, I was the executive director of the ACLU of Arizona, working to protect, restore access to abortion in the state of Arizona, to restore voting rights, to fight for LGBTQ anti-discrimination across the state.
30 seconds.
I was a senior vice president at a national environmental organization, founding executive director of an immigrant and border community organization, and a staff member of an indigenous land rights organization. All of this is to say that I have spent my career pushing elected officials to do the right thing, I've been at the other side of the table. So I know what it means for communities to have someone in a seat who listens to them, respects, trusts the leadership of communities, and will work arm in arm with folks to achieve a vision of justice and equity for all of us in District 3.
Thank you. Mr. Cuevas?
Thank you. Miguel Cuevas. I'm running for Pima County Board of Supervisor, District 3. On my father's side, before Arizona was a territory, we called this home. On my mother's side, they come from Magdalena in Hermosillo. I'm a first-generation U.S. citizen, first-generation high school graduate, college graduate, and also earned my master's at Grand Canyon University. Defying the odds, definitely. Come from a lower socioeconomic household, single income. At that time, my father made about $25,000 when I was growing up. Now, I'm fortunate enough to make over $150,000. I'm glad to be a part of the middle class because I think that the middle class is what runs our economy, what grows our communities, and holds us strong. For me, I have elected to run for this. I never intended to, unlike some others. And when Sharon Bronson made a decision to step down, I felt the call to service. For myself, I served on the Tucson Unified School District Governing Board during the Great Recession. I tell some people that from 2009 to 2012, those were some of the hardest decisions that the school district had to make. We had to cut $100 million, close 20 schools, fight the racist state legislature, and we also had to stop the district from going over on state takeover when it comes to failing schools. All of that while I was 22 years old, and helped TUSD get out of the path of bankruptcy and turn around. Now, these days, you hear Tucson Unified in a positive light. That wasn't by accident. Judy Burns and I worked on policies. Every single policy in TUSD was touched by Judy Burns and myself and updated to get TUSD on the right path. Now in the news, you just recently heard the debacle at Pima Community College and now the University of Arizona. Tucson Unified is a gem, and that isn't by accident. For myself, I have served in the private community, private business for over 19 years. A lot like District 3, which is in rural, suburban, and urban district from Winter Haven all the way to the border. I have served, I have worked in the front line at Burger King, a cart boy at Target, all the way to now being a director for a tech company. I embody what District 3 is. I have made my fair share of mistakes, and you'll hear me own those later on, I'm sure. But I've also shown that I care deeply about this community.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move into the questions. I'm going to start with Ms. Allen here. And I drafted these questions earlier this week, and I sent out a long list to all the candidates, and we're not going to get to even half of them. But we wanted to give them a chance to have a more substantive answer to their questions. So, Ms. Allen, we're going to start with the economy. What are your plans for fostering economic development in District 3? How would you support small businesses and attract new industries?
So I think as Miguel said, District 3 is incredibly diverse. From rural communities like Ajo to dispersed rural communities around 3 Points, Arivaca, Midtown Tucson, Marana. It's 130 miles of the U.S.-Mexico border, the entire Tohono Nation. Right? So to think about economic development then is to also think about for District 3, and then to think more broadly for the county, is to think about the complexity of needs that there are. The response then also needs to be as equally complex. So there's a number of things that I think would be essential. One is that economic development needs to be tied to values. Values within our county should include preservation and conservation of our limited water resources. We should have values that drive towards ensuring that the industries that we bring are bringing long-term, family-sustaining wages. And then the third value should be around building off of the strengths, the assets that we have in Southern Arizona. So a few examples of what that looks like. First and foremost, workforce development should be and is a central component of Pima County's economic development approach. We have to ensure that we are training and building a strong, effective, powerful workforce. We do that through partnerships with Pima Community College, through partnerships with business, partnerships with labor. I think we can also do a lot to support small business and to support entrepreneurialism. And then thinking about attracting industries, right? Industries such as kind of biosciences, industries that bring medical devices, businesses and industries that are consistent with our values. And then I think the last piece is really building on the fact that we are the largest city next to Mexico, which means then that we have, we've got the roads, we have railways, we have airports. And thinking about our role in relationship to our largest trading partner and what we can do to foster that relationship and continue to build and strengthen our economy. We need jobs, but we need good paying jobs. And we also need jobs that sit within a community that people want to live in, that people enjoy, that people respect, and that continues to support a vibrant Sonoran desert. Those things all have to be intertwined together, and I think we can have an economic development strategy that does just that.
Okay, great, thank you. Miguel?
I think, so one of the top priorities in my campaign from the beginning has been rebuilding a strong economy post-pandemic. Part of that is supporting small businesses. I've been fortunate enough to walk thousands of houses in District 3, from collecting my own petitions all the way to telling them about the priorities. I hear from small businesses that say that Pima County really turned their backs on them during the pandemic, slowing down permitting, slowing down the process to start small businesses. That makes it harder to start businesses. And one of my first actions when I get on the board is to direct the administrator to do a study and determine how long does it take to onboard a small business? How much does it cost for them to get started in Pima County? We have that responsibility. Over 90-95% of businesses in the nation is small businesses. That is what funds our economy. We've got to strengthen those processes. I am the only candidate that comes from the private sector. I have also grown businesses here as part of a leader. I've helped multinational companies like Uber, Coinbase, Priceline grow across multiple communities. I've seen them do good things, and of course I've seen them do bad things. And what I know is that we have to have strong policies in place that protect employees from unnecessary layoffs, unnecessary pay cuts. We have to also attract new economies, such as work from home. I'm fortunate enough to bring a high-paying job in this economy as a work from home employee. I think we need to incentivize those types of jobs coming back. I also believe that we should adopt some of Maricopa's initiatives. They have more economic development going there with manufacturing and tech jobs than Pima County. We have a strong education system that will support that. Marana has a strong working class that wants manufacturing jobs. And we have to make sure that we support that we work with the Arizona legislature, the governor, and other municipalities to bring those types of jobs back and grow those types of jobs for our economy. We deserve it. And one of my guiding principles is all while we're doing this, I want to make sure that we always protect the Sonoran Desert. So we do not endorse or bring or incentivize businesses that are going to harm our desert unnecessarily.
Okay.
So one of the things that I do at Pima Community College, I'm a vice president and administrator there, but I also teach a class. And the reason I teach a class because I think it's important that I stay connected with the students. And I talk to the students and I ask them, hey, what matters most to you? And this is what they tell me. They want good jobs with livable wages so they can live lives of meaning and purpose. So what that means to me is that economic development is crucial. Now, I just helped get a bill passed about 1.5 years ago for the creation of a Southern Arizona Sports, Tourism, Film Authority. I mean, we all felt the loss when Major League Baseball left, and we used to have a robust film industry here. And that's what got me involved in all these politics, is understanding how important these things are at the legislative level. So when we created this Southern Arizona Sports, Tourism, Film Authority, which is a statute now, our goal is economic impact. We want to bring good jobs here with livable wages. We want to make sure that we're not just set up for now, but for generations to come. Now, we want development. I mean, the reality is this. Development is coming to Southern Arizona. And we want to make sure that we build the infrastructure in a responsible way, yes, that protects our Sonoran Desert, that protects our habitat, but we need development with good paying jobs. That's what our community is saying. That's what my students are saying. Now, the other thing I want to make sure that we talk about is nurturing current industries and businesses that exist. Caterpillar, we have Raytheon. We want to make sure that we continue to nurture those relationships so we continue to have these jobs for years to come. Now, like was mentioned, workforce development is key. And that's what I do at Pima Community College. You know, community college have more leverage than any other university, any other college, because we meet students where they're at. You don't have to assess to get into Pima Community College. We're going to take you wherever you're at. And not everybody wants a bachelor's degree. Some people just want to get skilled up or reskilled. Community colleges are key. When I attended at Fox Theater, we had site selectors talking about what's important for these businesses and industries to see when they go into these cities or communities or counties. They want to see a functioning city, county authority. They want to make sure that we're getting along. They want to make sure that we have the infrastructure, that we have the skilled workforce. So all this kind of intertwines with it, but economic impact is really why I got started in all this.
Okay, so this one we're going to start with you.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to move into public health and safety. So what steps would you take to improve public health and safety in District 3, especially considering the ongoing challenges such as the opioid crisis?
Yeah, so one of my top priorities is to continue to support and actively participate in initiatives that are causing homelessness in our community. And part of that is the opioid epidemic. We have been, like many urban cities across the U.S., impacted by the result of corporate greed. The Sackler family, right? This is what happened. This is the result that unfortunately folks are addicted to opioids. We see it. I live on Grand and Silverbell. I see it at the bridges. I see it at the river banks. And I think that we have to start with a couple of guiding principles. One, we are all Mother Earth's and God's children, and we have to protect them. And that means we have to make sure that we get them the housing that they deserve. I support the Housing First initiative that City of Tucson has strongly built. I think it is going to be and is a nation-leading program. It's the right thing to do. Having seen addiction hit my own personal family, well, not opioid, the opioid epidemic, it destroys family. And this particular addiction is too hard for kinship to fight because they cannot get people on track. And what this means is that we have to have professional services available. We have to make sure that we continue to make readily available Narcan. This is a life-saving drug that will reverse an overdose while it's happening. We have to make sure that testing of fentanyl and various prescription drugs is available. The Pima County Health Department does that now. We've got to continue to do these efforts. A part of that also is this is not just going to be solved here at the county level. This is going to require, from the national level, from Biden's Justice Department fighting that bankruptcy that the Sackler family is trying to push in, all the way down to us protecting our community.
So one of the most important things that we could do as elected officials is keep our communities healthy and safe. That's priority number one. And this hits close to home for me because I have one of my former student athletes. I don't know if he's here. Is he? Engels, where are you at? There he is. There's my guy. So Engels here played baseball for me back in 2003. Had a ACL knee surgery and got addicted to opiates. And I asked him permission to talk about this because it's important that you know this. So for the last 20 years, I've helped Engels Polanco navigate the system, whether it's Cope Behavioral Services, Kodak, La Frontera, you know, incarceration, back and forth, all these different things. Now I've got my master's degree, 2 bachelor's degree, have all these amazing fellowships, and I'm having trouble filling this stuff out. It's challenging. So, I mean, the key thing is this, is one of the things I've always done, I put coach on my posters because it's important that we can bring people together and teams together. And one of the things that I know is that in the education world, we have something that's called Achieve 60 Arizona, Achieve 60 Pima County. Now what this does is the goal is that by the year 2030, 60% of our population will have post-secondary degrees from the ages, I think it's 18 to 52. And what happened with this initiative, state initiative, is that it got the K-12 working together, the community college and the universities. We need something like that at the public health level. So here in Tucson, here in Southern Arizona, we got more nonprofits per capita than anywhere in the country, which means it's great because we're a caring community, but we're all pulling in different directions. I would try to make sure that we would have an initiative that would bring us all together, pulling in the same direction, using each other's resources. Where am I out of time?
You have a minute.
A minute, okay. So, I mean, that's what would be important to me. You know, here's the thing that I've always lived by as a administrator at Pima, as a faculty member, and as a staff member, as a coach, is I've treated every single student that I've had like I'd want my own 2 sons to be treated. Jonas and Amaldi, where are you guys at? My 2 boys. Treated every one of them like I'd want my own kids to be treated. You know, in the Marine Corps, I was in the Marine Corps, we have a saying, no Marine left behind. And I believe no person left behind here in Pima County. I believe if we treat every community member like we want our own kid to be treated, we're always going to be on the right track. Thank you.
So the public health, public safety, and housing, these 3 big buckets are inextricably linked, right? And they have to be. If we invest and improve public health, then we're improving public safety. If we invest in housing, we're improving public health and public safety, right? So this is one of these things that we can't enforce our way out of. No amount of additional law enforcement is going to solve the opioid and fentanyl crisis. It's also an issue that we can't look at just in isolation. If we do, we will get the balloon effect, where if we squeeze it in one place, it just pushes it out into a different community. Okay? So what that means then is that we have to collaborate at different levels. So one, meaning that we have got to be able to bring together the forces of the county, the city, other municipalities that bring in our public health departments, that bring in the courts, public safety, bring in our housing, bring in our mental and behavioral health folks, have to be able to work together, and that has to happen across multiple jurisdictions. The scope and scale of the problem must be met with the complex scope and scale of a solution. I've been, you know, in the course of the campaign, right? We've now knocked on 8,500 doors. there's a number of things that folks, and we always ask people, what are some of your priorities? What are some of your concerns? What's bothering you in your own neighborhood or keeping you up at night? A lot of folks are concerned about the fentanyl crisis, and they're concerned about folks living on the street. And I'm heartened by the fact that folks want to ensure that our response, that our approach is one that is rooted in recognizing the humanity, recognizing the struggle that people are going through. I think what we need to do is, and I think like Miguel said, I'm a big believer in housing first. In order for folks to get stability, you gotta have a roof over your head and walls that surround you. We need great treatment. We need to be focusing on treatment for mental health, addiction, trauma. Those things we've got to be able to invest in and ensure people's path is one of stability and security and health. But we also have to address the stigma, right? Treatment is hard. It is hard to put forward that you have a problem, that you have addiction, and we have got to do all that we can to treat the stigma of mental health and addiction issues. And then ensure that at every step across our communities, that treatment is there, so that when people are ready, they can step into treatment.
So just a rebuttal.
If you would like to, please go ahead.
So one of the things I agree with Miguel and Jen here, you got to have housing first. But it can't just be giving somebody a house. You got to have accountability with that. And there's some cities out there that are doing a really good job. You have some places, I know in Utah and Colorado, where they have sanctioned camping areas, they have levels of small housing. But you're right in the fact that if a lot of the housing that is available, you have to be off drugs or you have to have a job. How do you get off drugs or have a job if you don't have a place to put your head down? So that's something I do agree with. But if we do these types of these type of solutions, we got to have the accountability. We got to have those services wrapped around it. Whether there's a lot of crime within the homeless, unhoused, we got to have security. We got to make sure that there's access to lawyers, judges, so if they're on a warrant, they could get off that warrant. So I just wanted to add that because that's important. And when these site selectors come and they visit and they see tents all over the place, that's a concern.
Miguel, if you wanted to.
Yeah, I'll respond to that. I think that, so if an academic, right, philosophy is Maslow's hierarchy of need, the first thing is that anyone has to feel safe in a physical condition. And so there should be no restrictions or anything attached to getting someone off the street, especially when it comes to the opioid epidemic. The one rule is they want help. You cannot force someone that is addicted into a program. It will never work. I've seen it in my personal life, with my family members dealing with gambling. Try to push them into helpful situations. It never happens. It never happens. And so that would be the only condition. And that will be a win-win solution for them because they want help and we're providing that service, but also to the community because now we're beginning to do something about this situation and getting them integrated back into our community.
Okay. Yep. All right, wonderful. And also, just to make things easier, when you guys got the 30-second mark, I'm going to raise a paper.
Okay.
So the paper's down, you have time.
Okay.
Okay. And then moving on to the border. District 3 includes a long stretch of the Arizona-Mexico border. What role should the county play with regard to the border? And are there any specific policies you'd like to see put in place or eliminated? And I believe this is Mr. Soto starts.
Yeah. So here's what's interesting about the border issue. So I was just in Ajo this morning. We had an event there this morning. I'm talking to a young lady whose husband works at the border. And those are the conversations I need to have. The people closest to the problem are usually closest to the solution. So I need to have those conversations with people. But here's what's interesting. Like I said, I was in the Marine Corps. We had a real famous general named General Chapman. Now, General Chapman was amazing because he desegregated the Marine Corps. Light green Marines, dark green Marines. He did an amazing job. He reduced it from 300,000 to 200,000. He was in the Vietnam War and he was in charge of the border. So when he got done with his time in the Marine Corps, he became in charge of Homeland Security of the border, right? And here's what he did. He militarized the border. He kept people in, right? So we used to have an amazing bracero program, right? Where people could work and then come back. That border for us is an asset. It's got economic impact. If we do this right, we can make sure that that border and our neighbors, that we're working together. Now here's the other part of that is we're failing right now at the border. People are coming in from all kinds of different places. And it's important that we advocate to the federal government that we get what they need so people can go through the ports of entry and they can have the services they need, and that they make sure that if they come through another area that they get sent back and maybe they don't get an opportunity to come again. So we don't have the cartel and all these other things involved. Now we got to be humane. They're human beings, right? And we got to make sure that how we treat people is how we treat our own family. Here's the other part. We talk about asylum seekers, a lot of people coming to the border. We got people here right now living in the shadows that are here by no fault of their own, who haven't broken a law, who go to the grocery store, pay taxes. We got to have a pathway for citizenship for them because they're doing things right. They're living here and they're doing things right. So there's got to be pathways, but we've got to look at work programs. How are we going to work with our neighbors to the south in a way that can bring economic impact? I mean, we love it every Christmas. Small business is the lifeblood of this county, and we are excited when they come and they shop here and they spend money here. We got to continue to look at the border in different ways. We've got to secure it. We've got to make sure that the people coming across are here for the right intentions, but we also got to make sure that we're humane and compassionate.
Wonderful, thank you. Ms. Allen?
So, for about a decade, I was a founding executive director of an immigrant and border community organization. So it means that I work from San Luis, Nogales, Naco, Douglas, and little immigrant communities around the state. One of the things that we used to try to push, right, and this was during the days of when we were working for comprehensive immigration reform, when it was McCain and Kennedy, when Republicans and Democrats would sit down together and try to craft out a solution to a broken system. It was us during the days of when we were working with Flake and Congressman Flake and Gutierrez, again, trying to work on a bipartisan solution. One of the things we used to really emphasize is that the border is home to over 1 million people. It is not a barren wasteland with natural disasters happening of people coming across. People go to school, they go to church, they have quinceañeras. Los Ambos Nogales. Both Nogaleses are so inextricably linked with one another. They share fire departments and ambulances, right? Like that's the reality of our border communities. They are communities. Ports of entry, then, are literally the portals that connect up our two countries, but connect families, businesses, schools, churches. So our ports of entry are just incredibly important connectors. They need to stay open. We can all look back at the impact of shutting down the Lukeville port of entry had on Ajo businesses, on workers, on families. But we need to continue to invest in ports of entry and expand ports of entry. We need to ensure that the Tono Atom, who are separated by a border, continue to have the traditional ports of entry and the ability to go back and forth and visit the Atom in Mexico and visit the Atom in the US side. And we need to continue to put ourselves out there as a welcoming community, because that is who we are as a people, as a state, and as a country. We need to continue to push the federal government to uphold their end of the bargain. We have not had a comprehensive overhaul of our broken immigration system since Ronald Reagan was president. The strain and stress, the impact of that is borne out today by looking at what our border looks like with folks from all over the world coming across and battling over a broken, inadequate asylum system. The border is a federal responsibility. Immigration is a federal responsibility, including measures like HCR 2060, which was just approved and is trying to put the role of local law enforcement as immigration enforcement. Those things shouldn't be happening.
So the borders, well, I believe that the border should be secure. To Jen's point, that is the national government's role. If elected, you'll see me continue to support the county's principles, from making sure that we continue contracts with Humane Borders. These migrants that are coming through, some of them are my friends that I've met in Colombia and that I met in other countries as I've been able to travel across Latin America. They deserve to be treated with dignity and respect that they deserve. And that means that a basic necessity like water, we continue to support that at the county level. Whoever is elected as the next sheriff, I will strongly encourage them to continue their mission of not working with the Border Patrol in petty crimes. I don't think that that is their mission, and I think that it is their responsibility to hold firm on that. The other is stop racist dog whistles like HCR 2060, trying to arm the Sheriff's Department as enforcers or ICE agents. That's not their role. It's another racist MAGA Republican referendum to try to push an issue that really is a national issue. Now, if elected, that means that myself will have those direct conversations with some of the Republican legislature. Hopefully we get to move that to a Democratic state legislature. And then also whoever wins in the Siscomani-Engel race, encouraging them to fund it. One other important part is that we have a silent homeless crisis. For you that are reading the news, you'll know it's not so silent, but the county has currently a program that houses asylum seekers. And if that program is no longer nationally funded, the county currently actually says that they will not do this at the cost of taxpayers. That's the current policy. So it's incredibly important that we extend that funding, that we say to the national government, do your job.
Thank you. All right, now we start with Ms. Allen. Let's talk about gun violence. The Pima County Supervisors recently approved an ordinance requiring gun owners to quickly report any lost or stolen firearms. Do you support that ordinance? And generally, what role should the county play with regard to gun control?
I absolutely support the new ordinance. Gun-related violence is a problem here, just as it is all across the country. You know, what's the word? I'm ashamed, perhaps, that my child and other kids have to go through active shooter drills at our schools. I think it's trauma-inducing, and it is such a, it's just a sad testament to the state of our gun laws and our communities that our children are exposed to that. Those of us here in Tucson, you know, we were one of the first communities to have what has become a long list of communities to understand and feel the impact of a mass shooting. I think many of us had close friends that were shot or lost their life in the shooting for the Congress on Your Corner when Congresswoman Giffords was shot. I lost a good friend in the course of that, and since then have identified and advocated for gun control and gun violence prevention. I think the county should do everything that it possibly can to prevent gun violence prevention in our communities, in our schools, in public places, anything and everything that it can. We need to have red flag laws. We need to ban assault weapons. I think we owe it to ourselves, to our children, to our neighbors, that we should end the epidemic, the crisis of gun violence in our country. Period.
I agree. I support the policy. I think that it is our responsibility to test the state legislature and determine, where is our span of control. For the most part, the county's hands are tied by this Arizona legislature. It's unfortunate. And that's why it's going to take us to change the legislature and get more Democrats in there so we can put more common sense, responsible gun laws in place. We've got to protect it. We owe it to our children. This is now the leading cause of death for children across the nation, gun violence. It's a sad state of affairs. When I served on the school board, that was my constant fear, was getting that phone call that there could be a mass shooting or it may happen. And fortunately, there was a lot of false alarms because of the systems we put in place. Thankfully, because of the bond program that we successfully completed, we redid fences and other security protocols in Tucson Unified. That's why you haven't seen that happen in this community, because we know that the state, the national government's not going to do anything about it. So we have a responsibility to our children, to our community, to keep them safe. Jen, I'm really sorry to hear that you were impacted by that. What happened on Jan 11th, I was working at AFNI, which was down the street. We heard sirens from everywhere. I remember vividly where I was that day when Congresswoman Giffords was shot and others were impacted. We cannot have that again in our community. We owe it to our children.
Great.
So on Thursday, we had a special assistant to Joe Biden, Tom Perez, visited the Desert Vista campus where I'm at. And we had to get that going really quickly. And so our chancellor asked me, hey, the mayor wants to have it at Desert Vista campus. I said, well, we've got active shooter training going on right now. We have all these TRIO programs. Can we move it somewhere else? And she was like, no, you got to get it done. They want to use the campus on the South Tucson. So we were trying to figure out, do we cancel this active shooter training because we have a lot of people here, a lot of law enforcement? And I said, no. I mean, if President Biden's special assistant, Tom Perez, is coming, they need to see what's really happening. And we're having active shooter training because we need to have active shooter training. Now, talking to law enforcement and collaborating with them, because this is an area I want to continue to educate myself, because talking to law enforcement and talking to people that carry guns, people are passionate about the Second Amendment. They are. I have my brother here. Where are you at, Benny? A police officer for 25 years and had a lot of those experiences. Yeah. Officer of the Year 1 year, right, Ben? And the thing is this, is people are passionate about the Second Amendment, and I don't personally carry a gun, but I know that one of our rights as U.S. citizens is the Second Amendment. So how can we make sure that that have these guns are responsible? Well, we need to regulate it. Those red flags and making sure that if somebody has mental health issues or has an issue with an intimate partner, that they're not allowed to have a weapon. So, I mean, I support the ordinance that if, somebody gets a lost or stolen gun, it needs to be reported. But we need to come up with solutions and figure out how to work together. This isn't a Republican or a Democratic thing. This is our community that is being impacted by this. So we need to make sure that we continue to have the conversations. We need to be able to work across the aisle and have these difficult conversations and come up with sensible solutions. I can guarantee you, we all want the same thing. We want safe cities, we want safe communities. I can guarantee you that. Now, how we get there might be different, but we need to continue to have the conversation. I mean, the worst thing we could do is not want to talk to somebody because they're Republican, Independent, or whatever it is. We need to have these difficult conversations. That's it. I'm a little early. Did I get the 30 seconds back on the
this one you're going to start, Miguel, right?
Uh-huh.
So I want to talk about property taxes. Before the county supervisors passed the budget, there was talk of raising the primary property tax rate to fund specific initiatives. What is your philosophy with regard to raising and lowering property taxes? Should it be raised whenever the county needs funds, or is it a tool of last resort?
Yeah, I think, I saw an opinion from the Tucson Sentinel, right, that essentially described very well the bait and switch that is happening right now. And this really is lasting policies from Chuck Huckleberry, which is when debt stops in the secondary rate, they then increase the primary rate. So in effect, they're not raising taxes on you because it's net the same bill, but they really are because it's the primary rate. Now, whether that is the scheme, that's how we're going to fund our government or however we're going to do it, we owe taxpayers an upfront answer on how we're going to properly tax. So that's step one. We have to be honest about that. As a first-generation homeowner, it stresses me out, right? The only time I'm going to get happy that my tax bill goes up is because the value of my home went up. And I feel that pressure, and I know many, many homeowners in District 3 also see that pressure. So we have that responsibility to be incredibly transparent. To answer your question, here's the deal. It's a rural, suburban, urban district. And what that means is that we have folks in lower and middle class that cannot afford another dollar on their bill. This has to be the last option of the county government. You saw me as a school board member balance a budget while cutting $100 million while giving employees a raise. It can be done. I've shown it many times when I was on the school board. And guess what? We didn't go into bankruptcy. We stopped the Republican legislature or Tom Horn from taking over because we were responsible. You're going to see that same fiscal responsibility if you elect me.
So our property taxes are crucial for public services, but it does have to be a last resort. I mean, everybody's feeling the impact of inflation, and so to add property taxes, that's a challenge. But there's other revenue streams out there. There's other opportunities, whether it's federal, whether it's state. We have to explore those other revenue streams. We got to make sure that, whatever we're doing is going to impact people in the right way. So, for example, one of the things that we talk about is balancing development and then balancing protecting our resources. Because if we have more houses, we have more property taxes, right? We have more development, but how do we do that in a way that we're not interrupting our habitat? So that's something we need to explore, these property taxes. My son just graduated from Mercer University out in New York and out in Dobbs Ferry, New York, and I got to travel all around out there in New York, and I saw a lot of these really cool houses, multi-family houses. I saw condos, I saw townhomes. I mean, those are things that we need to explore. These 15-minute neighborhoods, right, where you have everything you need within 15 minutes, walkable neighborhoods they call it, right? To make sure that you have all the resources there. It's a green way of doing things because you have everything you need and you reduce your carbon footprint because you do it in a responsible way, but you're getting funding because of property taxes. So there's different ways to look at this, and you need to get creative on how we can find different streams for funding.
Great.
So I think it's really important to think about the context of the budget crisis that we are in, and understand kind of who is to blame and why. So it's important to put our budget in the relation to the state legislature and the decisions that were made that then impact the revenue streams and the revenue that the county gets. So for example, the governor and the legislature switched our tax from a progressive to a flat tax, which resulted in a loss of $800 million that is borne on the backs of cities and counties and residents. We also have a legislature that expanded the school vouchers and the ESAs that were budgeted from the 60 million range that ended up costing over 800 million. We've also got a legislature that just went through and tried and swept successfully opioid resettlement funds that were supposed to go out to communities to treating treating the opioid crisis. So all of that then puts us in a bind, right? That puts the county in a bind. But that context is incredibly important. So I don't think it's simply a question of, are we going to ratchet up or ratchet down property taxes whenever there's need. I think it's important to think about what that need is and who contributed to it and why. I have the job in one of my previous jobs of both raising and managing a $22 million budget for my department. I did not appreciate nobody does, the notion that we just have to keep slicing the pie in smaller and smaller pieces. I think that it is also our responsibility to figure out how to grow the pie, expand the pie, because our communities need that. The loss of the county's budget and cutting the budget means that vital services such as eviction prevention, weatherization programs, assistance and support for seniors on fixed incomes, those are the things that tend to get cut, and our people deserve better than that. I think property tax is one tool. It's one tool of many tools. There's sales tax, there's bonds, there's other opportunities and there's just other opportunities from federal funding and grants and expanding those opportunities. I think that we deserve, our communities deserve to have the services that they need in order to thrive and have the opportunities to prosper. And our budget as a moral document should reflect that commitment on our part.
So one, I do agree, context matters, and I do agree that, once again, our state legislature has put us in an interesting place. But I want to be incredibly clear and want you to see what kind of supervisor I would be. You can't just put a sales tax on. One, it takes a unanimous vote. And as long as there's that one Republican on the county board of supervisor, that's never going to happen. So we have a responsibility to balance the budget. I am the only person in this race that has done that. Hopefully never have to do it in a great recession or depression in a national sense, but I've done that. The second part is we've got to be incredibly responsible and very communicative about what is our priorities. What are your priorities? Is that roads? Is that economic development? Is that getting people homeless, solving the homelessness crisis? You're going to see me be abundantly clear about that. And later on, we'll talk about general obligation bonds. We've got to do that. We have to fix our jail system. We have to fix our ailing facilities. We haven't had a bond program that has updated these facilities in over 20 years.
I just want to make one point in that throughout, I've been in leadership roles of nonprofit organizations, which are like businesses, except for the fact that they don't seek a profit, right? Which means that we have budgets. Every single organization, and then I've been in leadership roles in them, and executive level roles in them, have had to manage, approve, and navigate difficult budget decisions. The League of Conservation Voters budget was over $100 million. Then complicated decisions of staffing decisions, revenue sources, programs, and what we could do and what we couldn't do. Every organization from the ACLU had complicated budgets. It was my responsibility to also raise the money, in addition to ensuring that we could spend the money, and what money we had. Similarly, well, just across the board. So I just wanted to emphasize that piece, that budgetary and financial management is a long history of roles that I've been in.
Okay, great, thank you. And so I want to, we've been going for an hour now. And so I want to pause for a moment, and I want to ask if there's anyone in the audience who has any questions they'd like to ask the candidates. Raphael, if you could just pass an index card and the pen to whoever has a question. Okay, so the county jail is aging and in need of repair or replacement. And this is going to be one of the big decisions that is going to happen in the next few years for the next set of county supervisors. So what do you see as the most pressing issue at the jail, and what steps would you take to fix it?
So I know right now they're consulting and talking, looking at the justice system, recidivism and all that is going on. But here's where I want to switch gears on this a little bit. You know, we talk about our jail and if we should renovate it, should we build a new jail? And from my understanding is jails become obsolete after 20 years. Now my question is this, what are we doing to keep people out of jail? What programs are we doing so that's not an issue and we don't need to build more jails? You know how they determine how many jails are built? 3rd grade reading level. You know, one of the most important things that I've done at Pima Community College is our early childhood education. 90% of the brain is developed before the age 5. So if you think about that, if we can build a good foundation, we're going to put ourselves in a good situation. So there's a famous economist named James Heckman who says for every dollar you put in early childhood education, you get a $16 return because you're not having to have all these support services or jails. Now, I understand that a lot of the people in jail did some bad things, right? But the other part of that is we got to make sure that when they get out of jail, that they have pathways to good jobs. Because if they don't have a pathway to a good job, they're going to go back to doing what got them in jail in the first place. So how we, you know, if you're getting an apartment, if you're getting a job, those are some of the questions that are asked. You know, some people might have made a mistake, but they want to get on the right track. We got to give them a pathway for that. Now at Pima Community College, we're actually in the jails. We're trying to skill people up so that when they get out, they don't go back doing what they're doing. Now, even though they did something wrong, we got to be humane. I mean, just goes back to the first thing I said, treat everybody like you want your own loved one to be treated. So we got to make sure of that. So I know there's a comprehensive plan that's being looked at, and I would just monitor that and look at it closely and make sure that whatever we're doing it in a way that is humane and compassionate, but we're also mindful and good stewards of our taxpayers' money. Instead of putting $1 billion into a jail, maybe we put $250 million in and use the other part to keep people out of jail. So I think all these things kind of intertwine because our jail system, a lot of people that are in jail have mental health issues and they need to get the services that they need. So in just the last 30 seconds is I just want to say this is also something that I've got to educate myself on. You know, I'm not an expert in this area and I don't claim to be an expert, but one of the things I do know is I know how to get to the right people that have the right information. That's what I would do. I would talk to the right people, have the right information so we can make good decisions.
You know, the jail and the issue around the jail is actually one of the reasons that I'm running for this seat. You know, when I was working at the ACLU, we started getting phone calls from family members whose loved ones had died in the Pima County Jail. So it got me looking at who the decision makers are. One is the sheriff, who oversees the jail. The other is the Board of Supervisors, who approves the budget and policy decisions related to criminal justice, in addition to all of the other important resources and services and infrastructure that the county provides. The thing I think that is so important, it's a thing that I've heard from family members, is that we are using jail as a one-size-fits-all solution to the public health crisis, to the mental health crisis, to trauma crises that exist in our community. And in fact, it's a solution that is only exacerbating the problems. Isolation, incarceration makes mental health worse. So what I think we need to do, instead of thinking about, $800 million for a new jail or not, I think again, it's a question of we need to put less people in jail. and start on that assumption that we are going to have a decreasing jail rate. We also need to be investing in a different kind of first responder system, right? A lot of folks have looked at this model out of Eugene called CAHOOTS, that has kind of mental health and community health workers as first responders. And that being something that, that through a 911 call can sort of sort through and figure out if there's a behavioral mental health issue at play, then you don't send law enforcement, that you send your community health workers instead that can triage that problem, and they have had tremendous success, right? Because a lot of folks are in jail because of substance abuse, mental health, trauma issues that have been triggered a law enforcement response. And then you get, when everything, if all you've got is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail, then we end up driving folks into the jail that don't need to be there and in fact shouldn't be there. I think those are the sorts of solutions that I would love to see the county digging deeper into and exploring, because incarceration is not a solution. It disproportionately impacts so many folks of color, folks with disabilities and mental health issues. It is unjust and unfair, and I think we can solve it.
For about the first 19, 20 years of my life, I actually grew up right in front of the county jail, right there by Mission Road. There's a trailer park right by the Quick Mart. And so for me, my whole entire life, I have lived in front of, this system, seeing mainly a transient population coming in and out because they go to Quick Mart right away, cash their checks and everything. But one thing that I have realized as I continue to grow is that, yes, we do have to hit on the policy, and I'll talk about that in a second. But for whatever reason, the current system, if it's broken or it's not, there are people that end up in jail. And the reality is that it is the Blue Ribbon Committee earlier this year submitted its report to the county, to the administrator, Lesher, and said, you're at 90% capacity. It's not built to state of the art. It's dangerous. To Jen's point, folks that have mental issues have to go from one side of the jail to the other side to get help in the middle of whatever their crisis is. It's a very dangerous situation for everyone, from our sheriffs that are serving our community to those that unfortunately end up there. Unfortunately, some of my family members have ended up there, from domestic violence to DUIs. And I know they're not proud of it, but they did tell me what a S-hole it is, right? And obviously we're not going to make it into, a luxurious place, but we have a responsibility to treat everyone with respect. That's one of my guiding principles. Here it comes again. We have to do a general obligation bond and fix the jail. It is grossly a misconduct. It's a liability. We're going to get sued. We're very, very lucky we have not. Now, from a policy side, our county attorney and the board has to work hand in hand. We have to be in sync on who, how do we apply the law? How do we apply county policies? We've got to do a better job of that. We have to have a stronger relationship. I'm not coming in with Sharon Bronson's hangups, so whoever comes in as the sheriff, I don't have a public debate with you. Whoever comes as the attorney, I'm not writing an opinion about you. I'm Miguel, and I speak for myself, and I promise that. I will not come with that. I didn't ask for Sharon's endorsement because I didn't want those hangups. I will come with a fresh pair of eyes and do right by those that are in jail and right by you, the county, our constituents.
So a couple points that were made that I want to hit on is, what kind of Jen said is we got to have other opportunities. Maybe jail's not an option. Now, I was just in Ajo, and they're concerned. There's some some issues there in Ajo as far as security and home robberies, those kind of things. So they've got some concerns. Their concerns is that people aren't held accountable. So I got to explore that a little more. But one of the things that I also know is that I play in a 50 and over softball league over at Santa Rita Park. So when I say Santa Rita Park, you know what's going on in Santa Rita Park, a lot of the unhoused there. And I talk to the people out there that have issues. I have conversations. But here's what's also interesting. The team I play for, actually, one of my teammates is right over there, Gasper Limon. He actually runs the team. But Gasper could tell you this. A lot of guys on our team are law enforcement, right, Gasper? But a lot of guys spend some time in jail. And so you have these, but we all grew up on the west side of Tucson, right? So we're all buddies, and we all kind of come together and help each other out. But here's what a friend of mine, Peter Galvan, told me. I asked Peter, we're out there in the outfield, and Gasper always gives me a hard time, says, pay attention because I'm talking to people, right? But Peter Galvan was a TPD and was had like over 1,000 calls on SWAT. I said, Peter, what's the answer? Like, the situation out here, he says, when it was best is that when instead of taking someone to jail, we took them to services. And I think we need to explore that, taking them to get the services they need instead of taking them straight to jail and overfilling our jail.
All right, and are you and the candidates going to have any questions for each other? No?
I can make up some questions.
Well, then let's go to the audience here. If you raise your hand if you have a card that you filled out. Great. While he collects those, I do have one more question for you all. All right? And that means I've already lost it again. Is it? You go through. Yeah, there we go. This one is about climate change. All right? So how should Pima County prepare for and mitigate the effects of climate change? What specific measures would you support to enhance the resilience of local communities?
Yeah. I think that climate change is an existential but incredibly real crisis that we know so potently here as we're out knocking on doors in 110-degree weather.
With humidity right now.
Yeah, it's sweating. But beyond that, so I think that the county has led on both from the county had a sustainability action plan that it put together about 15 years ago, which was ahead of the curve. The county has the Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan, which has also had the county ahead of the curve in protecting the desert and land conservation and development. I will say we're a little behind the curve in developing a comprehensive long-term plan that will combat climate change, slow it down, as much as decrease our contribution to it, as well as making our communities resilient and adaptive to climate change because it is a reality, right? So we are just starting to work at the county on a climate action plan. And I think we need to make it as long-term and robust as possible. We need to focus on decreasing not just the county operations, but county-wide, decreasing our greenhouse gas emissions. We need to think about how we improve efficiency across the county operations, but through the vehicles, the buildings, through transit, all facets, increasing efficiency. We can do so much more around water conservation and ensuring that we are preserving every drop of water that comes into our desert. And thinking about both from rainwater, groundwater, recycled water, surface water, and developing really tight plans to fully utilize them and protect them and conserve them. And while we work on a plan, which will take a while, there's some low-hanging, urgent action steps that we need to be taking. One of them is around weatherization and ensuring that our homes are as efficient as possible. Knocking on doors the other day in early June, there was a woman whose electric bill had already hit $500, right? Almost one quarter of District 3's housings is mobile homes, right, which are highly inefficient if they are older. I think we need to boost up our weatherization and efficiency programs, particularly for seniors, folks in mobile homes, to ensure that folks can stay and afford their homes as efficiency and energy costs get so extreme under extreme heat.
First off, I'm a Democrat that believes in science. So start there, right? Number one, I do believe climate change is real. I see it as I travel across the globe. I see it as a Tucsonan, right? Born and raised here. We got snow my first 20 years probably twice of life. Now we're seeing it more often. Stuff is changing. We can see it right in front of our eyes. I see this in many different ways. One, I've been fortunate enough to serve in tech companies that are ahead of the curve, that have goals to be neutral on their impact to the carbon footprint. We've got to look at some of those examples and determine how do we adopt those type of policies as a county. Now, what does that mean? That means pulling back a previous issue of the general obligation bonds. We've got to do an assessment to see what is the age of our fleet, what's the age of our facilities, and we have to make sure that we get them up to code and that they support this strategic plan to make sure that we're addressing the climate change issue. Also, it's an issue for employees. We're making it right now with an aging fleet and operation system. That means that's dangerous to our employees. That means they're being put in situations that is unethical and immoral. Once again, that's another liability issue. We've got to make sure that we move on this very quickly. You're going to see me begin to act on that within the first 100 days if elected. From the public side, I do agree we have to continue programs that weatherize our homes for seniors, weather our homes for mobile homes, trailer parks. We've got to do that. Having lived in a trailer park the first 20 years of my life, I know that a swamp cooler don't work during May to September, and it's hell, right? And so we've got to do our part to make sure that we take care of our constituents. The other part, being a former board member of TUSD, part of our strategic plan 10, 12 years ago was build for future growth on the southwest side. And what I know about the area on Ajo and Kinney is there's a lot of floodplains going on there. So we've got to assess District 3 and make sure that we're not putting any development in dangerous situations. We've got to make sure that the zoning is up to speed. The other part is, as a supervisor, I got my first $400 electric bill this month. We've got to hold the ACC accountable and not let them raise our rates on our electric bills. You're going to hear me as be one of the loudest advocates, and I will be your advocate, even if it's not my authority. I promise you that.
You talk about air conditioning bills. I can relate. We just got my 91-year-old mom here a new air conditioner, and it makes a difference because it runs more efficiently. So I think we got to continue to explore technology. We need to explore wind. We need to explore solar panels and continue to have these sources of energy so we don't have that carbon footprint. And we need to make sure that the infrastructure we do have is that we're being innovative with it. One of the things that's scary is power grids. With all this heat going on, one of the power grids go down, we're in trouble. People's houses stop getting cooled, right? And then what are we doing about cyber attacks? I don't know if any of you read that book by Ted Koppel, Lights Out, but that's scary. Those are things that we need to continue to keep our systems upgraded so they run efficiently. We need to make sure that when we do have development, that it's green development, that we have drought-resistant landscaping, that we have EVs, charging stations, these type of things. We need to make sure that when we look at some of the opportunities for green development, that we restore and revegetate. Right? So, of course, we're going to have to develop, but are we restoring and revegetating? One of the things that I really like that our mayor did is the 1,000,000 trees, right? right? I think that's a great idea. We need to continue to plant trees, revegetate. You know, we look at our Santa Cruz River, and we need to continue to make sure that we're making sure that the organic vegetation is there, and that we're getting rid of some of the other things that aren't indigenous to those areas. So for me, I think this is an area that when we attract these business and industries, a lot of them, they want that low carbon footprint. The houses that we build now, they're so energy efficient. They're so much better as far as water harvesting, whether it's rainwater or surface water, whatever those things that we're doing to preserve our water. The challenge is some of our older buildings and older homes, they're not real efficient. So we need to continue to renovate those type of homes that they're energy efficient, so we reduce our carbon footprint. That's it.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have a question from the audience here. This one is directed at Mr. Cuevas, but I also want to expand it to all the candidates. At least twice you mentioned your high income from a private sector job. If elected, what will be your priority? Your private sector job or District 3 supervisor? And so for the other two candidates, do you plan to keep another job while you're supervisor? Please go ahead.
If elected, yes, I do plan on keeping my private sector job. Fortunately, as a supervisor, we do have staff that will help support the community. Coming from the customer service industry, you'll see me, one, put constituents first, whether that's meeting with me, whether that is calling to my staff. We'll make sure that we have the right people in place, and then we put you first. I'm a servant leader. That is what I do as a leader in the private and public industry. And then, you know, as I continue as a supervisor, I'll reassess the situation. If it's not sustainable and I'm not leading properly, then I'll be upfront with you. But at this moment, that is my plan.
And then, please go ahead.
All right, well, for me, one of the great things, I've been in the Arizona State retirement system for over 30 years. I was a middle school teacher at Wakefield when I was 21, 22 years old. So I can retire as of about a year and a half ago. I think when I looked at the numbers, I'm making about $11 a week. If I were to retire, I would be making, so I would retire. I'd put my whole effort and energy into being the best Pima County Board of Supervisor I could be. That would be my only focus, my only job. And the reason I'm running is because I knew that if I do get this job, I'm retiring from Pima Community College. You know, I spent a lot of time at Pima Community College helping build pathways for my students to success and to make sure they have good jobs. I want to do that now for the community, and I want to do everything I can to make sure we have those pathways.
I quit my job to run because I felt like I needed to do that in order to spend the time with the, you know, I've been making the rounds with all 11 district councils on the Tohono Nation and meeting with all going to council meetings, going to community meetings, going out to the Altar Valley multiple times, being out in Ajo a bunch of times. So in order to get that depth and breadth of understanding of the realities of this massive district, it's the size of the state of Connecticut, right? I quit my job, so we're making do. And if elected, this would be my full-time job. I think that's what District 3 folks deserve, full-time supervisor. I think that the expansiveness, the diversity, the complexity of this region, I think it deserves that. I also think it's a good paying job. And so I think I would just focus on that.
There's a couple of things. One, let's be clear. If elected, I wouldn't be the only Board of Supervisor that is working in the private sector. There are other Board of Supervisors that are currently doing that. So it's not like I would be setting a precedent, just so we're clear. The second part, while I know that the school board is not at the same level, I've shown that it can be done. During that time, it was a full-time job, but because there was no pay, you still had to pay for that lifestyle of being a public official. And for me, I'm fortunate enough that my family gets to live with me. I'm very family oriented, and I'm helping. This is generational change that you're seeing me do, which means that I have to lift up my family, and I have people that I'm responsible for, like my little brother, getting past high school next year, hopefully. And so for me, that's why I have to make sure that I balance. I'm not trying to bankrupt my family or myself also. I have to be responsible.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I'm gonna ask you guys one more question, and then we can do your closing statements. I know we've been doing this for almost an hour and a half, so I
It was
appreciate
like
it.
5 minutes.
So this one is it's two questions that I had on my list as well, and it has to do with the rural nature of your district. And so they deal with basically how are you going to improve transportation in rural areas, and how are you going to improve early childhood education in rural areas. And so I think let's start with you. Are you next? You can start then.
Sure.
Yeah, I think I did.
Part of the reason why I made county roads as one of my top priorities is because I've heard from those out in rural Arizona and suburbia, where essentially they have said the county, the previous supervisor, has left them behind. And first we have to look at Highway 86. We have to make sure that it supports the growth and the needs of that part of District 3, District 5. We have to make sure that some of the county roads that are out there get improved. The county has been doing this type of system. I just talked to a constituent that's lived out in the Ajo and Kinney area for 40 years and says, it's so weird, the county repaved one road, but the adjacent road, which is dangerous, they said, oh, we'll get to it one day. We have to do better. We have to be consistent. And what that means is, if there is a budget deficit, you're going to see me not vote for a budget that cuts maintaining county roads. I promise you that. That is one of my priorities. It's off the table.
And with the childhood education.
Child education is a part of the Prosperity Initiative. I also, come from the school board. I believe in it. The county already supports early child education, so you will see me continue to support that, if not expand those services. Because at this moment, it's supplementing what the state's not doing. And we have to do that, because to the point that was made earlier, if we don't invest early, right, then it has long stream down road effects in terms of incarceration, in terms of income, in terms of our workforce. And we just owe that to our children. We owe them their early child education. We have to make that an option for county, our constituents in the county.
Soto?
All right, so early childhood education is funded by the tobacco tax. And people aren't smoking as much tobacco as they used to. And doesn't include vaping, right? So I don't know if we should encourage people to smoke more, or we should figure out how we can get the vaping to be part of that legislation so they can incorporate that, because we're losing funding for early childhood education. And this is important to me. One of the first awards I've ever won that didn't have to do with athletics was I was a Pima region champion for First Things First for early childhood education champion. And my mom was really proud of me because I had to do, thank you. Is that my mom? My mom's. But, that was the first thing that I've ever gotten that didn't have to do in athletics or something. And I'm so proud of that, because that is something I believe in so much. I mean, I mentioned the economist James Heckman and the return on our investment with early childhood education. We need to partner with others. We need to partner with child parent centers, with C Campus, with Head Start, with First Things First, with United Way, and we did that. So I've done that. I know how to figure out how to put teams together and put people together and come up with one common goal. So that's important, early childhood education. Now, the other part of the question has to do
Is
with
transportation in rural
transportation. Okay, so 30% of our county is rural, is unincorporated, right? Now, what I hear from a lot of the people when I talk to them is access to go to the grocery store. I was in Robles Ranch out in 3 Points, and one of the things that they were talking about is how when they have to go to the store and if they're taking a bus and they're trying to carry their groceries, that's important. We need to have transportation for everybody that has access. We need to have access to our parks, to our schools, to our roads. And so the RTA Next is important. RTA Next is going to connect all of this, and we need to make sure that we're supporting that, and we're making sure that we can connect our rural communities with our incorporated communities so that people have access to public services, whether it's medical help, whether it's groceries and so on.
So, one of the programs that I hear the most often about that folks love that the county does is the PEEPS program, right? Provides scholarships for early childhood education. I would love to figure out how we can expand PEEPS. Right now, it has provided about 1,700 scholarships to kids, and I'll note that the majority of those scholarships, I don't know why I need to whisper, the majority of those scholarships have been in District 3 for variety of reasons. We need to expand PEEPS, both from the total number of scholarships that are available. I think we need to figure out how to expand it from not just 3 to 5, but from 0 to 3, so that young parents can get back to work, but can get back to work assured that their baby is going to be well cared for, and that their child is going to be going through kind of curriculum, like real childhood education. A good family friend of ours teaches in kindergarten and has stories that are heartbreaking around kids that struggle to hold the pencil, right? They did not get good preschool, good early childhood education, and they are not prepared academically to get in through their K through 5 classes, and they're behind. On the transfer, and I would also say for early childhood education, we need to think about the providers as well, and providing support for additional certifications and training so that they can up the quality of the education that they provide to our kids. On transportation, we hear from folks out in Sahuarita and Amado and Ajo about the important role of RTA in providing for shuttles and services, transportation services. I think it's one of the critical and often forgotten pieces about RTA is that it does fund transportation out in remote rural areas. However, we should also think about development, right? And thinking not just about kind of the rural community that we have now, but thinking about as we develop more in rural areas that we need to be thinking about multi-use so that we are not putting communities out in places where they rely on getting back and forth to Tucson or Marana or the more of the urban, semi-urban hubs for grocery stores and schools and other needs, right? We need to think about multiple uses and layering development within communities so that it's greater proximity to some of the human needs that folks have. That will also be important.
Okay, so that wraps up the questions for today. So let's do our closing statements, and it does look like we are back to Mr. Soto. All right.
All right, so, one of the things I want to share is this, is I'm not a politician, I'm a practitioner. I've been in education for 28, 30 years if you count my K-12. And the thing is this, like, I don't have any personal agenda, any personal policies I want. I want to go out and I want to hear from the people, and they need to tell me what they need. What's needed in unincorporated Ajo is different than what's needed in the Flowing Wells area, in this area. When I was the athletic director, I didn't tell my tennis coach, my football coach, or even my baseball coach how to do what they need. They told me what they needed to be successful, and I gave it to them. And I think that's what's important. You need to listen. Listen to the people and give them what they need. Don't give them what you think they need. You give them what they tell you they need, and they'll figure it out. You know, one of the things about government is all political power is inherent by the people, right? And governments are established to maintain and protect individual rights. So it's important that we understand what our role is. Our role is not to have our personal policy, our personal agenda. Our role is to listen and get people what they need to be successful. And just to be clear, I didn't seek Sharon Bronson's endorsement. She offered it. And I did take it because she's served our county for 28 years. You know, and whatever people think about that, I mean, that's important, right? You know, somebody that serves. And I just want to honor both of you because this isn't easy. You know, I mean, it's challenging. I mean, you got to have thick skin. And I want to honor Miguel and Jen because, you know, we're opponents. We're not enemies, right? And if one of them happened to win, and of course I hope I win, I would support them. And I would do what I needed to do to make sure they have what they need to be successful. I want what's best for Pima County, not just for now, but for generations to come, for my kids' kids. I want to make sure that we have the best Pima County, a thriving Pima County. I want to get a house for my son because he's back home, so we need affordable housing. You know, but really what I want you to know is this, is I truly care about our community. You know, I talk about how I've been here for generations, and sometimes people don't respond right to this, but I say I didn't cross any borders, the borders crossed us, right? Because we've been here for generations. But what I want to say is this, is that I will always be accessible. On every business card I have my personal cell number. You know, I believe elected officials should always be accessible. And I promise you this, you will always have my personal cell number. I'll be accessible. You know, as an administrator at Pima for the last 28 years that I've worked at Pima, I give all my students, my staff, my personal cell number. Because you should always be accessible as an administrator, as an elected official, even when you don't agree with something. Okay, I'm done.
Please go ahead.
You know, when I started out, I was sharing that for the last 25 plus years, you know, I've worked in social justice, environmental organizations. But what that means is for the last 25 plus years, I've worked with communities. Right? I've worked with a range of communities, from immigrant communities, border communities, indigenous communities, urban and rural, and working families who are black, brown, white, making sure that, and especially for the folks who are often pushed to the margins, or folks who feel like they don't have a place in talking to elected officials, don't have a voice in shaping policy. So especially those folks, right? To ensure that folks have a sense of their own power, of their own efficacy, their ability to inform and shape policy based on their own experience, not because of a degree or whatever, but from people's experience, that is what matters, and in that experience is often those best solutions that decision makers need to hear. I have spent my career trying to get elected officials to do things, oftentimes that they didn't want to do. So what that means is that I know the value of an elected official who is responsive to their constituents, who not just represents, but actually seeks the solutions, the opinions, the vision, the ideas, the problems from those who live them. I have built coalitions, brought together unlikely allies from ranchers, law enforcement, cross-border trade, faith leaders to all converge on specific issues and to come up with difficult solutions to really complex problems, right? Those are some of my strong suits from working with complex communities, bringing together diverse coalitions to come up with meaningful solutions, right? What I've been hearing through the course of the campaign, and it's been really important that we run our campaign and focus it most on talking to people. Like I said, we've talked to 8,500 folks on their doors, or knocked on those doors, had many conversations. People have said they want a responsive supervisor who calls them back, listens to the concern, has people's back. That is something I have done my entire life with folks who feel like folks don't have their back, right? And yet bring the experience to solve some of the more complex problems like affordable quality housing, a secure and safe water supply, and the climate that is enjoyable for us.
All right, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So first off, as mentioned, thank you to former Supervisor Sharon Bronson for serving over 25 years, to Dr. Sylvia Lee for serving in the interim. Thank you to the DGT. Curt, you did an amazing job. Give him a hand. I think you did phenomenal. And also to you, the constituents, to the political operatives, to the other campaigns that have been here, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this space and talk about the issues that matter to District 3. For over 25 years, we have the same leader. Now we have an opportunity to bring a leader that looks more like District 3, regardless of who wins, and that's great. I think that, with my campaign, first off, I've shared my personal situation, my income, all that, not to boast or not to sound arrogant, but more because I want you to know that I believe in District 3. I believe that we have a strong education system. I believe that we have the workforce ready to have good paying jobs. I think Marana has the workforce ready to go to support tech and manufacturing growth. I really see a strong possibility for District 3. I'm the only elected former elected official. And I also get the luxury of saying I'm the only one that comes from the private sector. That's huge. Most of our constituents work in the private sector. The reason why I bring that up is because later on in November, it's going to matter. This is not a Democratic majority district. This has a huge independent component. And what that means is we have to put someone in place that is electable, that speaks to independents, that speaks to Democrats about the issues that matter to them. That's why I've always talked about the economy from the first place. And we're a little bit at a risk with Joe Biden's performance the other day. And God forbid, and I'm still supporting him, if there is a down-the-ballot referendum to vote out Democrats, we have a responsibility to put someone that is electable. If that happens, we could lose the majority on the Board of Supervisors. I'm praying and hoping for Rex Scott, but he only won by the grace of God last time. This is real. For the political operatives that are here, I know you didn't choose me. I know I'm not your favorite, and I don't care. Here's the reality. You know me by now. I've been in the public eye for a little bit. And I'll tell you, whatever you saw in TUSD days, those definitely were my training days. I made some probably bad decisions, but I also know I made really good decisions that have impacts now. You don't see TUSD in the news, you see the U of A, and that's not by chance. Also, I signed the freedom to choose a union. All of my documents have the union badge. Thank you. Thank you.
So let's give them a round of applause, guys. I wanted to thank all of you for showing up. We can't do this without you guys getting involved. This is what democracy is. So.
Hi everybody, Adrian Fontes here. Did you know that the Democrats of Greater Tucson has a website, thedgt.org, and if you subscribe, it's only $20. You can support this great weekly communication where folks get together. Sometimes there's candidates, sometimes folks like me pop on to help understand what's going on in the world. The Democrats of Greater Tucson, thedgt.org. Join up today.
Everybody, it's Senator Mark Kelly. As all of you know, Arizona Democrats have had a lot of important wins over the last few years. We won 2 U.S. Senate races, and we delivered Arizona's electoral votes to President Biden and Vice President Harris. We elected Governor Katie Hobbs, Secretary of State Adrian Fontes, and Attorney General Chris Mays. Now, those elections were close, and our victories mattered. Arizona Democrats from the federal to the local level have delivered real results for our state on critical issues like combating climate change, lowering prescription drug costs, protecting the right to vote, and preventing more restrictions on abortion access. The Democrats of Greater Tucson offers the opportunity to hear from elected officials and candidates about that important work and the issues that matter to them. That information will be invaluable as Arizonans head to the polls. So this election cycle, whether you're signing up to knock doors, make phone calls, or joining the Democrats of Greater Tucson to hear from and speak to Democrats in our area, please know that your voice matters and we need you on this team. Thank you.